Think about the last time you made a truly ironclad New Year's resolution.
Oh, wow. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like a fundamental life goal, a profound promise you made to yourself about how you were going to live or eat or treat people.
And you're completely sincere in that moment.
Completely sincere. But somehow, by mid-February, you look around and realize you've completely veered off course.
Yep. Every single time.
You didn't orchestrate a dramatic rebellion against your own values. You didn't wake up and say, I'm going to ruin this today. Just, well, life happened.
Right.
You got distracted, you forgot, and you slowly drifted away from your original baseline intention.
I mean, it is basically the most universal human experience there is.
Yeah.
A slow, almost imperceptible drift.
Yeah.
The core principles that were supposed to guide your life just get buried under the sheer deafening noise of your daily routine.
Now scale that up. Take that exact same psychological phenomenon and apply it to all of humanity across the entire span of history.
And that's a massive scale to think about.
It really is. Forgetting the most fundamental agreement ever made. Welcome to your custom deep dive. Today, we are exploring a really profound piece of oratory Imam Ali's sermon regarding the divine succession of prophets and the final message of Prophet Muhammad.
And our mission here is to really unpack the architecture of this belief system.
Exactly. We are looking at this not just as, a dry piece of history, but as an incredibly deep exploration of human nature, our inherent tendency to forget, and the continuous interventions that are required to basically wake our intellects back up.
The framework Imam Ali outlines here is it's breathtaking in its scope.
Yeah, it really is.
He is mapping out the entire baseline problem of the human condition. To understand it, we have to start at the very beginning with this original primordial agreement.
Right, the covenant.
Yes,
Yeah.
God took a covenant from the progeny of Adam. It's this foundational understanding regarding revelation and the conveyance of the divine message.
But as we established with the New Year's resolution analogy,
Humanity drifted.
we drifted.
Exactly. Most of creation altered this covenant.
Okay, I have to stop you right there because I always struggle with this concept of a primordial agreement.
Sure, it's a heavy concept.
Like, how can humanity be held responsible for drifting from a covenant that we don't even remember making before we were born?
That is a very fair question.
It feels a bit like being held in breach of a contract you never actually signed,
Right, and that is the exact philosophical tension this sermon addresses.
Hmm.
But we shouldn't think of this covenant as a piece of paper signed in some pre-existence waiting room.
Okay.
In this theological framework, the covenant is hardwired into the human condition.
Hardwired.
Yeah, it is a baseline state of being. It's an inherent, inescapable recognition of a creator and an ultimate truth.
I see. So it's not a memory of an event.
No, not at all. So, to offer the covenant isn't to forget a legal clause. It is to betray your own fundamental nature.
Oh, wow. That puts a completely different spin on it.
And the sermon is incredibly specific about how this betrayal actually happens. It points out that people became ignorant of God's rights and began taking rivals alongside him.
Rivals. Now, the sermon notes that devils lured them away from knowing him and severed them from worshiping him. I really want to look at the psychology of that luring aspect.
It's fascinating, right? Notice it doesn't say humanity was violently forced away.
Right. Lured implies a hijacking of attention.
Exactly. We are so easily captivated by the immediate, the tangible, the shiny objects of our daily existence.
Yeah.
So the rivals it mentions aren't necessarily, stone statues or wooden idols.
Right. A rival is anything that commands your ultimate allegiance, right? Anything that occupies your mental real estate.
Hit the nail on the head.
I mean, it could be wealth. It could be ego. Honestly, today, it could be our phones.
Oh, absolutely.
We fragment our attention into 1,000 digital feeds. We're functionally worshiping our own distraction at this point.
Yeah, we are lured away by the dopamine hit of the immediate. And that severs us from the transcendent.
The mechanism of distraction is always evolving, right? But the human vulnerability to it, that remains completely constant.
Yes, and when we fixate on those modern idols, the baseline reality is completely obscured.
It feels a lot like entropy in physics.
Well, that's a good analogy.
Or even software degradation. Like, you can build a highly complex, beautifully organized system like human consciousness, but if you just leave it entirely alone without any guiding hand or maintenance.
It naturally tends toward disorder.
Right, disorder and fragmentation. The code literally starts to rot. Humanity's spiritual state, left to its own devices, experiences this continuous entropy.
The difference between software and the human mind, though, is that a computer program is passive.
True.
Human consciousness actively participates in its own degradation because of those desires and lures. We actively choose the noise.
Man, that's heavy. We choose a noise.
We do. And because of this spiritual entropy, because humanity drifted from its own hardwired nature, an intervention was required.
The system needed maintenance.
Exactly.
But dropping a new set of rules onto a degraded system doesn't fix the underlying rot. Like, if humanity's already distracted and fragmented, how do these messengers actually operate?
Well, this brings us to the specific duties of the sent prophets that are detailed in the sermon. They aren't just cosmic delivery people handing off a package.
Right.
They are sent to require the fulfillment of that primordial covenant, to remind humans of forgotten blessings, and to establish proof.
But there is a metaphor used here for their primary mechanism that is just, it's incredible.
The buried treasures.
Yes. The prophets are sent to stir within them the buried treasures of their intellects.
It's profound, and to understand the weight of that phrase, we really need to look at the concept of the intellect. It's often referred to in this tradition as the ACAL.
ACAL, okay.
Yeah. Modern people tend to equate intellect with raw processing power, or IQ.
Right, like how well you can solve a calculus equation.
Exactly. But in this theological framework, the intellect is the spiritual and moral compass. It is the very faculty capable of perceiving ultimate reality.
Which completely flips the script on how we usually view the relationship between God, a prophet, and an ordinary human being.
How so?
Well, if the prophet's job is to stir buried treasures, it implies the truth isn't some foreign object being violently shoved into our heads from the outside.
Right.
We already possess the inherent capacity for truth within us.
Yes. The knowledge is already woven into the fabric of your primordial nature, that original covenant we discussed earlier.
It's all connected.
It is. The problem is just the dirt and debris of the world. The constant luring away has literally buried the treasure under layers of ego and distraction.
So the prophet basically acts as a catalyst.
Yes.
Like a master teacher. I mean, a truly great teacher doesn't just read facts off a whiteboard for you to memorize.
No, they don't.
They ask the exact right question that awakens a dormant understanding you didn't even realize you possessed. They hand you the shovel to dig up your own intellectual treasure.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it.
They aren't uploading new software. They're giving you the decryption key to a drive that's already sitting in your own mind.
And awakening that intellect is really just the first step. Because once you have the shovel, and once your intellect is stirred from its slumber, it requires a target.
It needs something to aim at.
Exactly. It needs to be directed. The sermon explicitly states that the prophets then point humanity toward the signs of his omnipotence.
The signs.
Right. They establish proof by directing this newly awakened intellect to look at reality without the blinders of distraction.
And the sermon contrasts two wildly different scales of these signs, which I found fascinating. First, it points out the macrocosmic scale.
The huge stuff.
Yeah, the raised roof above, meaning the sky, the cosmos, and the spread earth laid beneath, along with the means of livelihood that sustain us.
These are the grand, undeniable realities of existence meant to inspire profound awe.
Awe is a powerful thing.
It is a primary gateway to recognizing the divine. When you look at the sheer, terrifying scale of the universe, it shatters the illusion of human self-sufficiency.
Right, it makes you feel small in a good way.
Exactly. But this sermon doesn't stop at the cosmos. It immediately zooms all the way into the micro, the deeply personal scale.
Okay.
It lists our appointed lifespans, the successive events that befall us, and notably, the ailments that cause us to grow old.
See, that specific inclusion, the ailments that cause us to grow old, that caught me off guard.
Really? Why is that?
Because you expect a sign of omnipotence to be something grand and perfect, a towering mountain, a galaxy. But arthritis.
Right.
A failing memory. Why are the basic biological realities of aging framed as proof of divine power?
Because the intellect needs to recognize two simultaneous truths to find its way back to the covenant.
Two truths.
Yes. The macrosigns, the sky and the earth, prove that there is a creator of immense power. The microsigns, our aging, our inevitable physical decline, prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not him.
Oh, wow. So we need to be broken down to realize we aren't gods ourselves.
Exactly the opposite of taking rivals, right?
Yeah.
While the raised roof of the sky inspires awe, aging and ailments are meant to inspire deep humility.
That makes so much sense.
It is a biological, inescapable reminder of our fragility. It prevents us from mistaking ourselves for being invincible.
We are created, dependent, and temporary.
Exactly. The intellect uses both the vastness of the universe and the frailty of the human knee joint to map its way back to reality.
Awe and humility working in tandem. That's incredibly elegant. But let's be honest about human nature for a second.
Let's hear it.
Recognizing our fragility usually only lasts until the headache goes away, right? Or until the crisis passes.
Very true.
We are famously forgetful creatures. We hit the spiritual snooze button. If entropy is a continuous force, like we said earlier, then a one-time warning wouldn't work. The software would just rot again as soon as the prophet left.
And that is precisely why the structural mechanism of the divine message relies on an unbroken chain of succession.
Ah,
The intervention must be continuous, because the entropy is continuous. Imam Ali insists that God never left his creation without a sent prophet, a revealed book, a binding proof, or an established clear path.
the sermon really highlights the resilience of this chain, too. It was never diminished by the smallness of their number, nor by the overwhelming multitude of those who denied them.
That's a crucial point.
It didn't matter if an entire society rejected the message. The structural integrity of the truth remained intact through these individuals.
And we must look at the mechanics of how this chain operated. It was not a series of isolated, random philosophers just, popping up in different eras.
Right.
The sermon emphasizes a deeply unified, interconnected system. Each earlier prophet specifically named the one who would come after him, and each later one formally recognized the ones who had come before.
So it's like a grand, multi-generational relay race.
A relay race, yes.
The message, the covenant, is passed seamlessly down the track. Every runner knows exactly who handed the baton to them, and they know exactly who is standing 50 yards down the track waiting to receive it.
Perfectly said.
It bridges the gap as the generations proceeded, the ages passed, the fathers departed, and the sons succeeded them.
This continuity is the ultimate safeguard against total spiritual collapse.
Right.
Even as empires rise and fall, even as the noise of the world reaches a fever pitch, the binding proof remains. It guarantees that no generation is completely abandoned to the drift.
There is always a mechanism available to awaken the intellect.
Always.
But every relay race has an anchor leg, right? A final runner who brings the baton across the finish line.
Yes, it does.
And the sermon moves directly into the arrival of Prophet Muhammad, sent to fulfill God's promise and complete the series of his prophethood.
He is the culmination of the entire historical and spiritual arc.
The anchor leg.
Exactly. The text underscores that the covenant regarding him had been taken from all the prophets before him. His distinguishing signs were known. His birth was noble. He was what all those previous runners across millennia had been pointing toward.
Let's look at the trek he was running on, though. The sermon describes the specific state of the earth when Muhammad arrived.
It was a very dark time.
Yeah, the people were divided into scattered creeds with dispersed desires and fragmented ways. They were likening God to his creation, distorting his names, and pointing to things other than him.
This is what maximum entropy looks like in practice.
Maximum entropy.
Yes, the original baseline covenant hadn't just been forgotten. It had been shattered into 1,000 contradictory pieces.
Right.
When the text talks about dispersed desires, it is describing a practical societal fragmentation. Without a unifying ultimate reality, everyone constructs their own gods.
Their own ideologies.
Exactly, based entirely on their own self-interest and localized desires.
I really need to understand the how here, though. Why was it necessary for the final prophet to arrive at this specific moment of critical fragmentation?
The question of necessity.
Right, and more importantly, how does completing the series actually cure a world lost in dispersed desires? Why wouldn't his message just be viewed as one more competing creed thrown into the chaos?
Because a localized or partial intervention is no longer viable when fragmentation reaches critical mass.
Okay, that makes sense.
The final prophet's role wasn't to introduce a novel, competing philosophy. As the text states, he was sent to guide them from misguidance and rescue them from ignorance.
Rescue them.
Yes. The mechanism of this rescue was unification. By completing the series, the final message acted as the ultimate antidote to dispersed desires because it stripped away the accumulated debris of centuries and restored the universal baseline.
Wow, so it pulled all those fragmented pieces back to the singular source.
It didn't offer a new God. It forcefully rejected all the rivals that had been constructed and demanded a return to the one primordial covenant that, remember, is already hardwired into every human being.
It was the universal restoration of the intellect.
The ultimate course correction,
Yeah.
bringing the entire cosmic narrative full circle.
Let's summarize the grand arc we've just unpacked from this incredibly dense, profound material.
It is a lot to take in.
It really is. We started with the baseline, an original covenant embedded in human nature.
Right.
We explored the inevitable drift, the entropy where our attention is hijacked by shiny rivals.
The dopamine hits.
Exactly. Then we looked at the necessity of the prophets, sent not as dictators, but as catalysts to stir the buried treasures of our intellects.
Handing us the shovels.
Yeah. They pointed our awakened minds to the cosmic awe of the sky and the humbling reality of our own aging bodies. And finally, we saw this massive, unbroken relay race culminate in the arrival of Prophet Muhammad.
Serving as the ultimate anchor.
Right, to rescue a totally fragmented world and unify their dispersed desires.
It is a framework that fundamentally demands active engagement. It forces you to view history not as a random sequence of chaotic events, but as a highly structured, deeply intentional process of divine education.
Which brings us right back to our starting point.
Ah,
The slow drift.
the forgetting.
Yeah, the forgetting of our fundamental purpose, and the noise of the modern world is arguably louder and more aggressively fragmenting than at any point in history. The lures are literally everywhere.
The specific distractions have changed, sure, but the human vulnerability to being lured away remains exactly the same.
Which means the necessity of waking up is just as urgent. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering thought.
What's that?
Well, if the entire purpose of this massive multi-generational chain of prophets, the reason they pointed to the stars above and the arthritis in our knees below, was specifically to stir the buried treasures of the intellect, we have to turn that inward. What buried treasures of understanding are currently lying dormant in your own mind today? What foundational truths have you let drift under the noise of your daily routine, just waiting for the right moment of reflection to finally be unearthed?
The treasure is already inside you. The intellect is waiting. It just requires you to pick up the shovel.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep digging.